Man, it's one of those really fun times of the year again, too, where we are going to be talking about all the different stuff on the podcast. Erik will be here right now previewing NFL Week 3. This week, a new show comes out for the Marvel MCU universe, Agatha All Along. So we'll be talking about that one. We'll have, horse racing previews of all the biggest races. This weekend, it's Parks with the Pennsylvania Derby. They'll have some big stuff and Churchill Downs. So make sure all of you who are joining us for this preview, make sure you're hanging out with us on Sundays at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Erik and I have a Sunday morning preview show every single week. And this week, we're actually going to start giving away every week one free wager to someone on the Sunday night game. So if you come in this week, it'll be Erik's YouTube. We're going to try to push everyone to Erik's YouTube channel to subscribe there, comment. They'll have to comment, Erik, on your YouTube, subscribe to your YouTube, and that's how they enter. Correct. So we'll ask them a question like, what's the score of this game? Or give us your best bet. We'll figure out a question leading into Sunday. And then anyone that comments and that subscribe to you, boom, they're entered. We'll pick one of them when we're done with our show, and then we'll give them a free 50 on the Sunday night game, however they want to play it on the total or the spread. So how's that sound? We'll get a little free action to some of the folks out there. Nothing's better than some free action. My friend, NFL week number 3. Let's jump on into it. We're going to use the order of the games that they are in Bet Online. So if you ever want to follow along or if you're curious which games we're going to next, we'll start with the Thursday night game and we'll basically go in chronological order all the way through. So things have changed a little, Erik, when the playoffs expanded to 14 teams a few years back. But since then, that was in 2020, only 6.25% of teams, 2 out of 32, have come back from an 0-2 start to make the playoffs. Last year, Texans did it. This year, that would mean Ravens, Bengals, Broncos, Rams, Titans, Giants, Panthers, Colts, Jags, all in the 0-2 spot. So they're hoping to be, to really buck history because we have not seen a lot of teams do that since this has happened. And it's been a good start to the year, I think, Erik, for guys like you and me, because NFL underdogs of 6+ points, 8-0 against the spread through 2 weeks so far. And they are covering the spread by an average of 9.5 points per game. This is the best start for big dogs in history. And if you want to go even a bit lower, underdogs of +5.5 are now 9-1 against the spread through 2 weeks. It's going to even out a little bit, right? Because you probably will see the adjustments in the line. But for some of the dog players, it's been a nice start.
It's been a great start of the season, yeah. A lot of underdogs coming in. A lot of teams a little bit inflated. It really shows how much preseason actually kind of means to these players with everything.
And I think we usually expect it in week 2 that you'll get the underdogs because it's that overreaction and the bounce back week and everything. But so far, we've had steady through weeks 1 and 2. So, Erik, let's dive on in. Let's start with the Thursday night football game. It's funny, the dynamic in this Patriots-Jets game, which has been a big rivalry for the years as division rivals, different with no Belichick, but the Patriots have really beat up on the Jets through the years. And we look at this game, the Jets are a 6-point favorite in this game, and the total's only 38.5. And one thing we discuss a lot, if there's a low over-under and a pretty sizable spread, you usually want to take the dog in that situation. This is also a quick turnaround Thursday night football. And if we were just going to talk about how these two teams have played with what the perception of them was coming into the year, I think it's kind of opposite. The Patriots have really been impressive because you sort of know what you're going to get from them, right, Erik? They run the ball, they stop the run, they can't really throw the ball down the field, and they struggle a little bit against the pass. But they have an identity. And they don't turn the ball over a whole lot. They're well coached. They're kind of tough. And you look at the Jets, I don't really know who they are quite yet. The defense isn't as good, or early it hasn't been as good as it was expected to be. Aaron Rodgers isn't quite as mobile. They're not really throwing the ball down the field. They're 15th in success rate, 11th in special teams DVOA. We just don't really know what they're good at. They beat the Titans, but they got outgained in the game. It was tied with 8 minutes and 40 seconds left. They went 74 yards, and the Titans got stopped on downs. They got 17 points in that game off of Titans' mistakes. Interception, they scored a touchdown after. Roughing the passer penalty extended a drive. Blocked punt ended up a field goal score for them. Levis with one of the worst backwards shovel pass attempts that you'll ever see. And instead of getting an automatic 3 points there, he gave that away. I mean, I don't know what to take right now from the Jets, Eric. I still kind of think they are who I thought they were before the season. I don't know how good their coaching staff is. I don't think they're that deep. They have some top-tier talent in spots, but Rodgers hasn't been all that impressive. Where do you go in this game?
I mean, if I were to play anything, I'd probably play the under. I know it's a low total. Primetime unders since the 2019-20 season are 60% to the under. 38 or lower, 60% to the under in prime times since the 2019 season. And if you go to 38.5, it's 61%. Even with these low totals, these are still going under. It's an insanely weird spot for the Jets because the Jets were on the West Coast for the Monday night game, short week, travel all the way back to New York, practice, travel down to Tennessee, then travel back up to New York on the short week. Just a weird spot to them with how many games they played to start the season. I think this game is going to be a little sloppy. I'd lean to the under. But these Thursday night games are just so tricky because we can see how the wheels can fall off.
Oh, yeah.
For example, last week with the Miami, how the wheels just completely fell off early in that game.
Yep.
So I'm probably just going to sit this one out. Maybe I'll dig in to try to find a little bit of a player proppage. But, I did this out. Hunter Henry's actually leading the Patriots in receptions, targets, second in yards. Maybe look to a little bit of his over receiving yard stuff. But in terms of side total, I don't want anything to do with this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's been just solid so far for the Pats because if they're going to be competitive in games, and they have been in 2 weeks, they need to do exactly what they've been doing. Hold opponents to 20 points, take something away. Seattle couldn't run the ball, but they could pass the ball. They need to be able to run the ball, win the time of possession. They won by 6 minutes. They ended up losing in overtime, but that's the formula for them. That's a formula that'll keep them in a lot of games and being competitive. I would lean on the Patriots side too, but you're right. These Thursday games, they get a little bit funky. I've just not been all that impressed offensively with the Jets. Their offensive line still isn't smooth, and it feels like they do need that other receiver. Is it Mike Williams at some point? Can he get himself playing back into? He played a bunch more snaps last week. He only got one catch, but maybe this week, just based on snaps, he'll be on the field a little bit more, and maybe that can help them. Eric, let's move on to the next game. How about both of these teams? 2-0 to start the season. The Chargers on the road, they go and play the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers, if we said the Steelers were 2-0, and you and I had to do like an AI of what the games were like, isn't it exactly how they played out? Like, isn't that Steeler wins like to the T, where you kind of scratch your head? Their defense played pretty well. They've only allowed 13 points in 2 games. So that's the fewest they've given up through 2 games since 2007. Terrific on the defensive side of the ball. 3rd in APA, 6th in DVOA, tops in the league in turnover differential. That's a thing that's kind of hard to sustain, but they do have a good defense and an attacking defense. So that's a positive. Maybe they can, keep towards the top of that. It's the offense though. 24th in EPA and success rate, 21st in offensive DVOA. I mean, they didn't do much at all in the second half against Denver. They had 16 passing yards in the second half on 8 attempts. At least Fields isn't turning the ball over. There were a couple big plays that were called back due to penalties too. One of them was really bad to Pickens that should have been a touchdown, and it got overturned. Their offensive line is really struggling though. They've had some bad penalties. They haven't really been able to give Fields a whole lot of time. Harbaugh's come in and put his fingerprint on the Chargers, but I think it is a little bit, I don't want to get too excited about the Chargers quite yet, because week 1 against the Raiders, that was a close game. The Raiders missed a field goal, and then when it was 16-10, they chose not to go for it on 4th down and 1, and that really flipped the game and made it look a little worse than it was. Last week, the Chargers played the Panthers and Bryce Young before he got benched, and we've seen now that the Panthers and Bryce Young were really bad. So I'm not sure how good either of these teams really are at 2-0. But hey, you'd rather be 2-0 than 0-2 right now. They've gotten the job done in both weeks. For the Chargers, they're doing the Harbaugh things. Their defense, top 5 in EPA, success rate, number 1 in defensive DVOA. But they played Carolina and the Raiders, who hurt themselves. They're running the ball super well, though. Second straight week, big game on the ground, 219 yards rushing, 44 runs. Dobbins had 17 carries for 131 yards. He's been awesome. He looks healthy. They don't throw the ball a whole lot, and it seems like they're not really going to try to because they don't really have a lot of weapons. It was cool to see Quentin Johnson, who had such a disappointing year last year, make some big plays. So now it's been back-to-back weeks. He's kind of been the de facto number 1 receiver. He had 51 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, a couple nice catches there. Any opinion in this one? Steelers hosting the Chargers.
Tomlin games the under 57%. Herbert's a little banged up. Why is this line moving in the Chargers' favor? That seems a little odd to me. Tomlin, 47% is a favorite. Chargers have only allowed 6.5 points per game. Number 1 defense. Team that had a lot of questions about their defensive side. Militers come in. I still think you can kind of run on the ball on them. To me, that's kind of what this game comes down to, because at the end of the day, both these offenses want to run the ball. But when you look at the Steelers, 6 DVOA defending the run, Chargers 1 DVOA. To me, this is going to be whoever can run the ball is going to be able to win the game. Is it going to be Fields? Has been a named starter. It's kind of weird how Tomlin operates. Like, why isn't he just named the starter for the rest of the season right now?
I know.
It's kind of weird. Like, he's kind of just doing this to kind of just motivate him and everything.
Yeah. And it is weird because Fields is what they need. We've seen, like, Fields gives them the opportunity to win,
doing what
they want.
He's just really smart with how he's calling the games. Everything's to the outside.
Yep.
One read, a lot of runs.
Well, you're seeing what Fields now, and this is just 2 games, but this is something that is sustainable for like a 10-win like type situation with smart coaching, with better coaching, right? Which is guys that win on the margins, put your players in a little bit of a better spot to succeed, and a good defense. These are things that he didn't have before as a starting quarterback. Nobody's going to say he's a top 5 guy. He's not throwing the ball down the field much at all. But if his decision-making is just, oh, you know what? I've got a good defense. As long as I don't make a bunch of turnovers, I'm going to keep our team in the game. He's been really solid with that so far. And I don't know if you're going to get better than that with Russ for what this team is. This team doesn't need to throw the ball or really want to throw the ball down the field all that much.
No, they're just going to dink and dunk it. But that's what Smith's doing. He's just limiting Fields' ability to hurt himself. That's what he's doing.
Yep.
Still a little confused by all the Cordell Patterson touches, but that's a whole different story.
I probably would lean Pittsburgh because I do think if I would trust one of these 2 teams overall and what we've been seeing from them as far as their ability to run in their defense, I think Pittsburgh's might be a little more real. The Chargers may have played a Raiders team that was kind of not moving on all cylinders offensively, and then a Panthers team. So we'll see. I lean Steelers in that one. Let's get to another tight spread here, Eric. The Colts host the Bears. Colts are just a 1-point favorite in this game. Colts, they run the fewest offensive plays in the league, and they allow the most. That's just not a recipe for success. You figured with a guy like Richardson, you'd be moving quickly, but what happens is younger quarterbacks that are still having a tough time with the playbook, that, maybe they're in their head a little bit. They're really focusing on wanting to throw the ball down the field. Sometimes it's just difficult to get in the huddle, up to the line of scrimmage, get everything off smoothly. Sometimes you're thinking a little too much. You're calling audibles. So this team isn't moving quickly. They have a negative 23.5 snap per game differential. That is nuts. Last year, Seattle had a negative 9.4. That was the worst in the league. This year, the Colts have a negative 23.5 through 2 games. Richardson wasn't really accurate, Eric, but he did have a couple drops from his wide receivers that could have helped him. And I think this is like what you're probably going to get from Richardson for a lot of the year. Big plays, taking big shots, but not really consistent on the down to down. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He just needs to get a lot of reps. 2 interceptions in Green Bay territory that hurt. And Taylor started to run the ball well. He had 12 carries for 103 yards, a couple receptions too for 30 yards. Where I was really disappointed with the Colts was you knew exactly what the Packers were going to do last week, and you just couldn't stop them. They could only run the ball. Malik Willis was not going to be able to throw the ball down the field. It was a great job by LaFleur to give Willis a couple comfortable throws early, but they just pounded the ball. I think they had 6 different guys carry the ball, and they had 261 yards rushing. So it's like when you know that another team can only do one thing and you still can't stop them, that was really disappointing to me, seeing that from the Colts, Erik.
Yeah, I mean, Colts are a frustrating team, but when we look at it, we need to remember that teams that are 0-2 at home are 55% ATS. Bears are 31st DVOA in offense.
Yep.
Their attackers have been brutal. The interior has been brutal. The right side has been especially brutal.
And you're seeing it, what happens with, like, however anyone feels about Caleb coming into the year, you're seeing what happens when you have a really bad offensive line, because it puts more pressure on you as a quarterback to try to make plays because you're so worried that you're not going to get as many opportunities. So he's taking shots that were a couple bad shots, running around a lot. I think he was pressured on 36 of 42 pass attempts and got sacked 7 times. They scored 1 offensive touchdown in 2 games.
You mentioned Williams, 267 yards, 2 INTs.
Like, he's not been good. I'm not going to pretend like he's been good.
It's just graded 31 with a bad offensive line going against a defensive line. Now, I know DeForest Buckner is out, but they still have Stewart and Payne, and this line's a pick. Like, I think the Bears are getting a little bit too much respect.
Completely agree.
One of the biggest teams with their future win total. This team easily should be 2-0. The weakness of the Bears defense, stopping the run.
They can't run the ball, right? Even if I was talking about what the Colts struggled with last week, stopping the run, the Bears haven't been able to run the ball because they're not getting any push at all from their offensive line.
Yep.
So it's not like they may even be able to attack one of the Colts' weaknesses overall. It really does feel like a nice spot for the Colts. You catch a Bears team after playing tough game on Sunday night. Like, if they get some help up front, they'll be better, but you don't just find a bunch of offensive linemen out there throughout the season. They're not just growing on trees. Like, they're going to be in a little bit of trouble for a while until they figure something out up front.
Yeah, and I expect a heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor with how bad the Bears are defensively stopping the run. Colts are only averaging 19 minutes and 54 seconds of possession in the NFL.
Insane.
That is the worst by far. Shane Steichen is an idiot. He's going to realize he's going to have to lean on the run game more. Richardson throwing deep the whole time, and this defense isn't allowed to rest. And that's the reason this Colts defense is struggling. They're just on the field so much because Richardson is just chucking it down the field. After the last 8 games of the year, Taylor averaged 19 carries a game. This year, only 14. I think we're going to see a heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor. Colts, in my eyes, have the advantages in the trenches. They have the coaching advantage. Teams that are 0-2 ATS, that are road dogs, that's what the Bears are, in week 3, are 41% against the number. I'm taking the Colts here. I got it at 1.5. The line movement's a little confusing to me, but I'll take the 1.5.
Erik, where do we head next? Yeah, I'm on the home team too here with the Colts. I think it's close like this. You got to you have to make the Bears prove it to you right now a little bit. They haven't really looked good. They should be 0-2. Their defense, I will give them a little bit of credit. Their defense has been playing well, but offensively really been struggling. Houston at Minnesota. Another game where I think, Minnesota's not getting a whole lot of respect so far. Erik, this team outgained the 49ers. They fumbled on the 1-yard line when they were going in to score a touchdown. And then they also threw an interception at the San Francisco 10-yard line. I mean, they a bit cleaner. They could have blown out the 49ers. Like that game could have very easily not even been close there. I don't know how long Darnold will continue to play well, but he does seem like a guy with a chip on his shoulder. This is by far the best situation when he's been getting reps that he's ever been in. Remember, he was with Gase, he was with the Panthers and Rule, I believe, but really bad situations. Now he's actually got a pretty solid offensive coach. He's got a legitimate receiver to throw the ball to. Is he going to be the best quarterback in the league? No, but there's a reason why guys like this go very high in the draft, and usually they have some ability. This is reminding me a little bit of Geno Smith, right? A guy who just struggled in some spots, and it's too early you don't want to get ahead of yourself. But one thing that was really important when I was watching that game, Erik, there was an interception. Sam had that interception, and it leads to a San Francisco touchdown. He comes right back and leads for a drive through a field goal. He didn't let the mistakes compound. And then later in the game, Aaron Jones is going in for a touchdown to put him up 2 scores and to put the game away, and he fumbles, and the game flips, and San Francisco goes 99 yards, scores a touchdown, and that's one of those things that makes you go, uh-oh, like, oh, no, you're going to lose this game. And sure enough, Sam comes right back down, leads a 62-yard, 14-play drive, goes 646, ices the game, kicks a field goal, they go up 9. And like those are the kinds of things that I thought were really important in watching. And Houston's defense right now, they're 19th in EPA, 20th in success rate. Think about who Houston's defense has had to deal with so far. They've played 2 quarterbacks who have, a combined 10 starts in the NFL? Between Richardson and Caleb. They're playing guys that don't have a whole lot of experience. I actually think this is another decent spot for this Vikings team at home. I think the Texans are still a little bit overvalued. Collins had a really good game, but I haven't been as impressed with the Texans overall. I would lean Vikings in here. Talk to us about your thoughts on this game.
Well, I mean, the line opened up 2.5. When I was looking at it, when I did my notes, it was down to 1. So obviously there is a lot of money coming in the Vikings. A couple matchups is how is Stroud going to do against this Vikings pressure? Flores likes to blitz. He likes to bring the blitz. How is Stroud going to look against that? Last year he struggled. Flip side of that, how is the Vikings secondary, which is it's insanely overachieving, the weakness of the team, going to be able to defend the trio of the Texans wide receivers? Vikings defensive line, offensive line against Anderson and Hunter. I'm a little bit concerned that those guys are going to get able to get home against home to Darnold. That's a worry point because Darnold doesn't do well with pressure. He starts seeing ghosts. What's the latest with Jefferson's injury? Look, he was really vague in his press, whatever it's called today. Just really said everything's all good, nothing big. I don't know with this game. How is Darnold going to look against the Marco Ryan defense? There's a lot of question marks in this game. I'll be honest. I really want nothing. There's certain games I really want nothing to do with, and this is one of them. I don't have any leans. Maybe Tank Dell bounce back. Worked a little bit more of the middle of the field, but I want nothing to do. One thing for fantasy is I know a lot of people are saying Cam Akers. Dameon Pierce has been hurt. He's supposed to come back. A lot of people went to Cam Akers in their fantasy football waiver wires. Dameon Pierce would be someone to look to get because I think this is going to be his backfield until Joe Mixon comes back from the injury.
Yeah, Houston struggled pushing the ball down the field. They had to kick field goals of 47, 53, 56, and 59 yards. Vikes got that big play from Jefferson. They blocked a punt. They got 2 stops on 4th down. The Flores defense was really confusing. This is the one stat that you just have to monitor. So far this year, Sam Darnold has a 72% completion percentage and a 111.8 passer rating. 2 games, both wins. Before that, from 2018 to 2023, 5 years, there were 39 quarterbacks that had 1,000 passing attempts in that stretch. Sam ranked 39 in passing completion percentage and 39 in passer rating. He was dead last of those 39 guys over the 5-year sample. So is he just grown up? Is he better? Or is he going to come back down to where he was? He seems like someone who could at least be a better version of himself now than some of these other guys who don't have the tools. Let's see if he has it now between the ears up top. That's where it matters. In a game like this, like Eric's saying, when they get a little pressure, is he going to revert back to seeing ghost, or is it a little bit different? Does he have more comfortability in this offense? There's Aaron Jones out there. He maybe could dump the ball to, or, have Jefferson out there to get a nice safety valve. Let's continue along, Eric. I'm on the Vikes side there on the home dog. Giants at the Browns. Browns are a 6.5-point favorite in this one. The Browns actually probably got the best game they've gotten from Watson, maybe since he's been in Cleveland. He started the game 11 of 15, 108 yards, a rushing touchdown, put the Browns up 13-3 at halftime, finished the week graded quarterback number 4 by Pro Football Focus passing grade. I mean, Watson's in the 20s, the deep 20s every week. So for him to be up at 4, that's a really strong week for him. And it does show you, Eric, like, it wasn't like the Browns destroyed the Jags. In fact, the Jags had a couple situations where they had the ball on the 2-yard line twice, and both of those times they had to kick field goals. So the Jags could have won the game, but what it does show you is if you're just getting even the level of play that you got from Watson, where he's not the best quarterback in the league, but he's a little better than average, and he's moving the ball, and he's able to make a few plays a game, Cleveland can win more games than they lose. We just haven't seen that from him consistently, because they're a bad offensive team so far. They don't rank higher than 25th in any of the offensive categories. Special teams is bad, but defensively, we know that's what they're going to lean on. They got to clean up the penalties too. They had 13 penalties for 100 yards in their last game. You're not going to beat good teams when you do that. The Giants, though, aren't really a good team, Eric. The Giants, they lost to a team whose kicker had to convert 7 field goals to beat them. And it was because their kicker got hurt. So instead of being able to kick extra points, they had to go for 2 a couple times and missed it. There was another point in the game where they would have been able to easily kick a 40-yard field goal. Couldn't do that because they didn't have a kicker. They tried to have their punter kick. He missed an extra point. So it was a bizarre game where one team can't kick, the other team can only kick. It was so strange, that Washington versus Giants game. And actually, Washington, because the way they were driving with these crazy long drives where they were just picking up short yardage all the way down, they had 7 drives, 8, but one of them was the quick drive right before halftime, and they actually kicked a field goal on all of those drives.
I mean, you look at the Giants, they're the first team to score 3 touchdowns, not give up an offensive touchdown and lose the game. One of the most unluckiest teams last week. And let's face it, if they had a kicker, they would have won that game. They didn't have a kicker. That obviously cost them. I want to be on the Giants here. It's sitting at 6.5. No one's really rushing to get this game. I have some alerts set up. I'm hoping that it gets to 7. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be here on Sunday at a 6, 6.5, hopefully a 7. Teams 0-2 ATS to start the season, 56.3% ATS. When they are dogs, that number jumps up to 60.9%. When they're road dogs, that jumps up to 62.3% ATS. This is what the Giants are. They're 0-2 ATS. Giants defensive line is solid. I know Burns is out, but they do have a solid defensive line, and that's important because we don't know what's going on with Conklin. Wirfs, are they going to play? They were suited up, limited practice this week. Their only offensive tackle is hurt, so they're really depleted on the offensive line. Do we trust Watson? He's only 40.6% ATS as a favorite in his career. Daniel Jones, for as much crap as he gets, 64% against the number. When we look at all the matchups and everything, of course they're going to say to bet the Browns, but I think this number is a little bit inflated.
Yeah, it is. It's too high for a team that doesn't score a lot.
Yeah, the Browns offense, they don't push it to the battle. They play at a slower pace. They don't force it down the field. Amari Cooper obviously has something going on. He's in a contract year, numerous amount of drops. He's obviously just costing him money. I don't understand this obsession with playing Deontay Foreman, who now is a little bit banged up. So we got, is this going to be the Jerome Ford game? But the Giants do have a good defensive line. The spot and the trends say to bet the Giants. I think this number is inflated. I had it close for like a 4.5 type spread. So I think, I'm going to bet it. I want the 7, but at 6.5, I'm fine with it.
The Giants had a post-game win expectancy of 71.2%. They should have won that game. If they have a kicker, they win the game. Like, it wouldn't have been pretty, but they did. And one thing they did really well, that was a positive, they got their rookie wide receiver Neighbors involved. He had 10 catches on 17 targets for 127 yards. So now you find little things. You pointed out the defensive line is good. They may be able to find a weakness in the Browns' offensive line where they're banged up and get to Watson. And now you at least have a playmaker that you can lean on. You at least have someone that on third down, Daniel Jones can look to. And I like, it obviously didn't help if you played the Giants last week and it didn't help them win. He had a bad drop late in the game, which could have extended a drive. It's a rookie thing. Like, you're going to have some mistakes like that. When you're getting targeted 17 times, that kind of thing's going to happen. That was a positive, seeing him get involved. I would definitely be on the Giants side too, and I'm going to be like you. I'm going to wait for the best number. If not, if it's at 6, I'm okay with it settling around 6 there for the Giants because it just feels too big for this Browns team. And the Browns are the type of team that we like to play last week, Erik, when they're a dog by a field goal or more. Because with their defense, they can keep them in the game. You don't want to have them have to cover with margin with the way they score and how inconsistent their offense has been. So both of us on the Giants side, we'll see what the best number we can get. Let's go to Eagles at the Saints. Saints, very impressive start to the season so far, Erik. The Saints have scored. So they scored on 14 of their first 16 possessions to start the season. So they scored on their first 9 possessions last week, all of the possessions that Carr was in. And then this week they scored on their first 6 before Carr finally threw an interception. So 15 drives in a row they scored before finally throwing interception. Unbelievable how comfortable they look with the new offense. They're averaging 32.5 points in the first half this season. 5 first half drives. They only had 3 third downs last week. They didn't even get to third down. Rashid Shaheed, he has 11 career touchdowns. 10 of them have gone for 30-plus yards. Since the start of 2013, he has 7 catches for over 50 air yards. No other receiver has more than 4 yards of air distance. He averages 51.4 yards per touchdown. This team averaged 7.7 yards per play last week, and they took their foot off the gas late. The defense forced 2 turnovers, had 3 sacks. They forced the Cowboys to kick field goals on 3 possessions. They held Dallas to only 68 yards rushing, 3.2 yards per carry. Carr, number 1 in the league, averaging 11.5 yards per dropback. Baker's number 2, and he's at 9.6, almost 2 full yards ahead. And Carr, did you see Carr do the Elvis pelvic thrust after scoring the touchdown? He scored a touchdown, and then he turned around, grabbed the crotch, and did the I was like, I've never seen Carr do anything like this. He looks really happy. He looks super comfortable. You think about Kamara, he's like McCaffrey. When McCaffrey went into the Shanahan, you have this running back who can catch passes, who can run routes, who can do anything you ask of him, and they haven't even really needed Olave yet. They've scored their combined score 91-29 through 2 weeks. And by DVOA, they have the 4th highest rated team ever through 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking great. And
they're getting a little too buzzy though now, right? Yeah. Like this is kind of the time when you maybe want to go the other way.
This line opened up at them getting 2.5. Now they're laying 2.5. That is a 4-point swing.
Yep.
Eagles, bring in Fangio. Sure up the linebacker position. Make the DBs a little bit better. Drafted all those young kids. They are 31st DVOA in defense, which is absolutely astounding to me. And the thing is in the Fangio system, you need someone that can get to the quarterback. They have the 6th fewest sacks in the league. So obviously some pass rusher Carter, who's not really his tendency. Someone needs to be able to get to the quarterback. Saints offense, you mentioned it. Motion, zone running scheme. There's film on it now. So it's not going to be like this forever for the Saints. This is a team like I hyped on a lot this summer with the hirings that they brought in. And what adjustments are going to be made? I think we're going to see this is the first time like adjustments are going to be made. How are they going to be able to combat that? I really feel this is a buying low point for the Eagles. Eagles offense, 7th DVOA, but they really don't push the ball downfield. AJ Brown is hurt. I'm reading he's not going to play. What's that going to do to the offense? Offense just hasn't looked right. I really felt that this was going to be a great offense for Hurts, throwing the ball down the field, a lot more running with him. He's looked bad. He really hasn't been that good. Allen, 36% ATS as a favorite. This gets to a 3. Obviously, principal play, you got to buy in, but at 2.5, this is just kind of a dead number to me. I want nothing to do with it. And it was kind of weird. Sirianni didn't address the team afterwards. He had it where Hurts addressed the team. He always has it where the players do a lot, where the players kind of manage themselves and everything and after a game. But that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, dude. Like, this is your thing. And ever since Schleichen and Gannon have left, this Eagles team has really taken a step backwards. We need to remember that they ran Peterson out of town, and he won a Super Bowl. I think Sirianni's on an insanely short list.
I agree.
Where he could actually be out sooner rather than later.
It just feels like the spot. Everybody saw what happened on Monday night, right? Everyone's down on the Eagles now. They should have won that game. If they do, this line's a little bit different. We've been high on the Saints. They're still not quite as good as beating teams 91-23, right? So this is just one of those spots with the way the numbers moved and everything. You have to be on the Eagles side or no play. Like, you can't be laying this number with the Saints, even if you're someone who likes the Saints. Just don't play it then if you're not sure. But if you're going to play it, it's got to be on the Eagles side right there. Let's get to the Bucks hosting the Broncos. Man, shout out to Baker. He's one of those guys that we've seen make a change and turn the corner. And it makes the Watson situation in Cleveland all that much worse with how well Baker's been playing. We saw him lead the Tampa Bay Bucks to a big win over your Lions. I mean, that was such a weird game, though. Like, that's a game that the Lions should have won, but you have to give Tampa credit for winning it. They got outgained by 230 yards. They became the second team since 1970 to win a game, despite being outgained by 200 plus yards and having a sack differential of -5 or worse. The defense is allowing a lot of yardage, but they came up with 2 interceptions and 2 fourth-down stops in the fourth quarter. There's another nice game for Godwin. He looks really healthy. He looks just really impressive right now, the best that he's looked in a few years. And Baker had a late run for a touchdown, but they're getting pretty banged up now. Going into the game, they were missing some players in the secondary, right tackle, defensive lineman. Keep an eye on Vea and his health moving forward. On the flip side, the Broncos, they just have not looked good at all. They're the best ranking they have on any metric is defensive success rate, where they're 21st. Everything else, they're 26th or better, or 26th or worse on either side. Like, there's just nothing that you're looking at saying they're really that great at. Nick's looked lost. He's just 11 possessions. They went 3 and out or threw an interception on 7 of them. First half, 39 yards passing, 2 sacks, didn't complete a pass beyond 70 yards, looking right at his receivers, throwing into traffic, never looking comfortable. Things got better in the second half. They did have 115 passing yards. They can't run the ball at all either. Combined 39 yards on 15 carries. They played well defensively in the second half, only giving up 62 yards, but they need some of their weapons. Sutton, he's got to be a big playmaker for them, Eric. He only has 5 receptions in the 2 games total for 64 yards. They need more from those types of guys to help take the pressure off of Knicks. I can't really get there to playing the Broncos. I certainly don't want to lay it with Tampa. This one's more of a stay away or on the Broncos if this can get above 7.
I actually sniped it at the Broncos +7. This kind of fits in with the Giants with me. I was going to play this regardless. I wanted the 7. I got to bet MGM on the 7. Bulls favorite 48%. I'd still play at the 6.5 though. Bulls home favorite 44%. Mayfield as a favorite 37%. teams on a 2-game losing streak to start the season that are dogs, 56%. Buying low, selling high. You know what I mean? Dogs that won the week before that were dogs of 7 points or more, which the Bucks were, that are home favorites the current week, 46% against the number. If they're laying 5.5 or more, that dips all the way down to 41%. When we do a deep dive into the Bucks box score last week, 2-10 on third downs. Lions had 247 more yards of offense, had the ball longer, were in the red zone every drive but 2. Lions just shot themselves in the foot. When you look at the box score and rewatch that game, it is insane how the Lions did not win that game by 10 points. And I talk about it on here all the time. One of the angles I love to play is I love to fade a team when their defense was on the field for 80 plays or more. This Bucks defense was on the field for 83 plays. The Bucks are banged up in the secondary, and now Vita Vea, who's the best run stopper in the league, is banged up and out. Also, I know people are a little critical on these rookie quarterbacks, but when you just kind of lined up who these rookie quarterbacks have played, Bo Nix has played the toughest defenses. Seahawks defense is legit. Steelers defense is really legit. I think this is a huge step down in competition for Nix, especially when you look at this Bucs secondary. This Bucs secondary is awful. I think the Broncos will be able to move the ball, and he plays a lot freer in the 2-minute drill. So I think this kind of does have a little bit of backdoor written all over it. Broncos defense has been good to start the season. The Bucs offense hasn't been that impressive. I mentioned the stats before. Even though they're 2-0, they beat a Commanders team, which could have the worst secondary in the league. And then when you look at the box score, they only had 247 yards of total offense against the Lions. I think this is just a buy low point on the Broncos and a sell high point on a team that is 2-0, but I still think they're a team fighting for one of the last playoff spots. I'll take the Broncos here. I got it +7. I played at 6 or 6.5.
Where do we head next, Eric? Let's go to Titans hosting the Packers here. So, man, this Titans team is a slight 1.5 point favorite. We get the Malik Willis revenge game, right? Malik Willis heading home here. So I got to give LaFleur a ton of credit, man. He got Willis ready for that game. He had no turnovers, no sacks, no bad mistakes. They had 100 yards in the first quarter. 6 different ball carriers. Jacobs had 32 carries for 151 yards, 34 carries overall in the first half as a team, and 53 carries, 261 yards rushing in a game where the other team knew they were going to run the ball. It was extremely impressive. Then you have the Titans, man, who they could be 2-0. And if not for some of these really bad mistakes from Levis. The one saving grace for them, it's been their defense. They rank 8 and 11 in defensive EPA, defensive success rate. Pollard is averaging 4.4 yards per carry. Titans averaging 5 yards a carry overall. And if they can learn to take care of the ball, they're 30th in turnover differential. They're going to be a little bit better. They gave up 20 points of mistakes to the Jets. An interception that became a touchdown. Roughing the passer penalty extended a drive for a score. Block punt ended up a field goal for the Jets. Levis with that awful shovel pass that cost them points. They would have been up 10-0. It feels like people don't want to play the Titans right now. And I don't know, when you have a team like the Packers led by Willis, I don't know how long you can sustain the type of game plan they were putting out there last week, Eric. That's something that's 1 week, 2 weeks, but not for a full season. Feels like one spot again to try to go to the Titans because they've been really unlucky. And if they clean a little bit up, very easily could be 2-0.
Yeah, I got the Titans here. I've got it at -2.5. I mentioned it, teams 0-2 ATS to start the season, 56.3% ATS. Titans, let's face it, they're the most unluckiest team in the league. This team, honestly, if Will Levis was capable, would be 2-0. Now you have Callahan calling them out in the press conference. I think what that means is it's going to be a heavy, heavy, heavy dose of Tony Pollard. Packers 16th DVOA, middle of the pack against the run. You look at it, though, they're allowing 142 yards per game. This Titans offensive line with Callahan here has been absolutely insane. This outside zone running scheme they're running has been giving other teams trouble, and I think it's going to give this Packers team trouble. I think they're going to be able to move the ball on it. When you look at the Titans offense, red zone 2 times against the Jets last week, no points. Didn't give up a touchdown against the Bears and still lost. Jacobs, is he going to be able to run? This defensive line is absolutely insane for the Titans. I think Jacobs is really going to struggle to run, and they saw Willis in camp. They know everything this kid is going to do. There's this trend going around about how first backups coming in, they do great the first game and bad the second game. This is the bad second game. I just think the Titans are going to be able to move the ball, must-win spot. I'm low on this Packers team. I think they're going to struggle. And Will Levis on the road, yikes. I'll take the Titans.
Both on the Titan side. Eric, let us go to Las Vegas. The Raiders, 5-point favorites over the Panthers. Panthers, this is Dalton time, right?
Yep.
And you feel bad for Bryce Young. Eric, you kind of called him.
He's like, you got to look at it like this. He was given every chance in the world to succeed. And Malik Willis comes to Green Bay. They're 20 days, and he's winning a game.
Well, my point will be, this is a litmus test because we saw it happen last year. And when you can remove someone and then put in random veteran like Andy Dalton, who's not going to be great, but who's just able to move the ball. If Andy Dalton is able to look worlds better than Bryce Young, then that's your litmus test. And maybe not just one game, but if we see Dalton for a few weeks and this team wins a couple games and moves the ball up and down, then you can really say, you know what? Bryce Young just doesn't have it. And I'm not going to defend him because when I've watched him, I think coming into the league, you will all have our thoughts on a player, but then you got to watch them and see. And sometimes you'll change your mind completely. And I do on players, but there's nothing like we watch Caleb Williams, for example. You watch Levis, for example. They'll make some bad plays, but then Levis throws that awesome bomb down the field to Hopkins, right? Like you see the glimpse. You see Levis kind of, he in the bad way, sometimes he's a little too Josh Allen, like he wants to make a play. Bryce Young, there's none of that. Caleb Williams, he's scrambling around. He has some cool stuff. It doesn't look great yet, but you can see, okay, in a year or two, maybe when he speeds things up, he'll make some plays. There's just none of that with Young. Eric, we didn't see any of that at all. Like no progress with him whatsoever. Do you just go kind of blindly to the Panthers in a spot like this, thinking they may get a little bit of a bounce with the new quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, it's a letdown spot for the Raiders. Raiders coming off a game where they're 9.5 points, kind of falls in that tread that I mentioned about the Bucs earlier. Teams after winning outright as a 7-point dog or more. And then when they're laying 5.5 or more, exactly the spot for them. We have this Dolphin. Do we trust Minshew to win with margin? Dalton, 56% ATS. I like these veteran quarterbacks because they're good for 3 scoring drives a game. That's what you're going to get. Are they going to be field goals? Are they going to be touchdowns? A mixture of whatever. They're good for 3 scoring drives. Dalton is going to open up this offense. Chubbard's going to have running lanes. Mingo's going to get the ball. Deontay Johnson's going to get the ball. This is a great spot for the Panthers. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. Teams 0-2 ATS. I've mentioned all before. This is like the 62% trend when they're road dogs, 58% on the road, 56% overall. Trends and everything say to take the Panthers. I'm going to do it. I'm taking the Panthers here. 3rd week in a row. Maybe I'm going to be eating crow after this, but the situation, the spot says take the Panthers. I got it at 5.5.
Eric, where do we head to? The Seahawks.
Yeah.
Seattle hosting the Miami Dolphins. Is this a Skylar Thompson game?
Skylar Thompson is going to play.
Tua is on IR. Tua's banged up now. The positive thing for this, now there's no rush for him. You don't have to worry about is he going to play next week? He's off for a month now at the very least. Take care of himself because you and I haven't even been the highest Tua guys in the world. but he can operate this offense well. He's the best guy to operate the offense with the weapons that he has, quick throws, all that stuff. Just, I wasn't that high on this team coming into the year. I thought they had some holes, and we saw that again in week 1. Should have lost that game. They got lucky with that fumble that the Jags had that flipped the game late. And then last week against the Bills, they just got their asses kicked.
Yeah.
I mean, they get beat up in that game.
This game is interesting. It opened up at 6.5 when the Tua knows, but now it's dipped down to 4. That's a 2-point move. That's like a lot of money coming in. And I think it's just because of that backup quarterback trend that we've seen over the last 5 years. The main thing is Skylar Thompson, is he going to be able to get the ball to Waddle? Is he going to be able to get the ball to Hill? Because we need to face it, he probably doesn't have that much snaps with him, doesn't have that much timing with him, rapport with him. Seahawks, 5th DVOA defense. But, the Broncos and the Pats were kind of able to move the ball on them. The one thing when I rewatched the game against the Patriots, I kind of feel that the Seahawks kind of figured out, hey, we got DK Metcalf. Let's kind of get the ball to DK. And do the Finns have anyone that can stop DK? I don't think they do. Dolphins defensive line, are they going to be able to get home against the Seattle offensive line? I don't think so. Kenneth Walker is a little banged up, but Zach Carbonet is more than capable of filling in. I think Seattle is going to eat against this Dolphins offensive line, which is clearly missing Robert Hunt. Geno Smith is a favorite, 38.5% ATS. I think the Seahawks win the game, but I don't want anything to do with this number. And I think we're going to see actually how smart Mike McDaniels is.
This is kind of what we're talking about, almost with the opposite of Bryce Young, right? Where now you've got a backup, an obvious backup that's not as talented or a starting quarterback like Tua. Now, can you get him in a spot where he's able to put you in a position to win a game? This is not a team that you can't beat, Seattle here. But Seattle's been really good on some of the metrics early in the season. They just haven't been able to run the ball at all, especially without Kevin Walker, because their offensive line is not good. Really cool to see JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, 12 receptions, 117 yards. It's actually the first time in Seahawks history they had teammates with 10-plus catches and 100-plus receiving yards in a game. Metcalf had 10 receptions, 129 yards, 14 targets. They're really highly ranked in DVOA and a lot of the metrics. So let's keep an eye on Seattle. Maybe they're a team that's a little better than we think. This is an important week for them because they could very easily go to 3-0. And you look around their division right now, the Rams and the 49ers, who we're going to talk about in just a few games, are both really banged up, Eric. So for Seattle getting to 3-0, that would be huge. That
would be actually huge, especially if you're sitting on a ticket for them to win the West.
Yep. Okay, Eric, let's get to the Cardinals next. They are hosting your Lions. Bad game for your Lions. I mean, teams are going to have some of them. Started 0 for 3 in the red zone, ended up 1 of 7. And then they had another interception right outside the red zone. They outgained Tampa 463 to 216. They had 26 first downs to 14. They won the time of possession by 8 minutes of the game. Goff 1-7 in games where he's had to attempt 50 passes. Probably makes sense because you're likely down and having to come from behind and throw a ton. Hutchinson has been a monster. He had either 4.5 or 5 sacks, depending on what you're looking at. He was making Baker really uncomfortable. The Lions had a post-game win expectancy of 96%, which is the 7th largest surprise loss based on this metric since 2010. They botched a drive at the end of the half. That cost them points, at least a chance to kick a field goal. They had 2 turnovers, some bad passes from Goff, only 4 penalties, but a couple big ones for 71 yards and penalties. Felt like a game your Lions threw away. And then on the flip side, the Cardinals, I mean, they just kicked the crap out of the Rams. And the Rams were really banged up. The line is bad, but the Rams weren't able to stop anything that Kyler and Marvin Harrison Jr. were doing. Kyler had a perfect passer rating. He had 6 big-time throws in the game and 0 turnover-worthy plays. He was graded number 1 quarterback by Pro Football Focus. He also had 5 carries for 59 yards. And on deep passes, he was 5 for 5 for 156 yards and 3 touchdowns. The odds of him completing all 5 of those deep passes was 0.3%. It was like statistically one of the better quarterback games you may ever see. Interesting game here, Erik. Cardinals hosting the Lions. What do you think about your Lions in this spot?
I really was hoping for the Cards to be 0-2 and the Lions to be 2-0 here. Lions, as you mentioned, completely dominated that game. Campbell, 61% ATS, 62.5% ATS as a favorite. Teams coming off winning a game by 30 points or more, 40% ATS. To me, this is kind of like, you look at it, this should be a play where we take the Lions, but I don't want to. Like, my issue with the Lions is some teams aren't closers. And I really am starting to question if the Lions just don't have that. Do they not have that killer, I'm going to step on your throat mentality? I look back to the 49ers game they should have won. Against your Rams, blew a double-digit lead, won in overtime, and they should have won this game. Like, they're constantly just teams, and they're just not finishing. They're not able to step on the throat, and I'm really worried about that. They should be able to dominate the trenches, should be able to run the ball with ease against this Chargers defense. But their back four, which has been brutal to start the year, are they going to be able to stop Marvin Harrison? Kyler Murray did a great job at the beginning of the game just to pepper Harrison with targets, get him engaged, and the wheels fell off quick. If the Cards are able to get up 2 scores, the Lions are going to get boat raced here. The Lions need to establish the run, not push it, and it goes back to a thing. Lions went from being the cute team, the going for it, fake punts that caught everyone on guard. Now they're the hunted. Teams are getting up to play the Lions, and I don't know if anyone on this team has that type of mentality for that. This is just a stay away from me. I want nothing to do with this game.
Couple more to finish up with. We go to, final thoughts for me on that one. Nothing to do with Arizona, Detroit for me. Dallas hosting the Ravens. Cowboys are, it's a slight dog now, basically even game. It's kind of bounced a little bit. Cowboys +1. Ravens heading to Dallas. Both these teams coming off of pretty bad losses last week. Dallas got the crap kicked out of them. The Schnikes crap kicked out of them. And the Ravens had that bad late loss. And it was kind of an old thing popping up, Erik. 10-point lead, they blow. 94.5% post-game win expectancy. They have had 10 losses when up 7+ points in the fourth quarter over the last 4 seasons. That's tied for the most in a 4-year span in NFL history. This offensively, their success rate 3rd in the NFL, offensive DVOA 4th. The issue is really their defense early on. And they were one of the better defensive last year. They've only generated 4 pressures on 13 blitzes. Last year, they generated pressure on 48% of their blitzes, which was 7th highest in the league. They only have 1 unblocked sack. They only have 5 unblocked pressures. They led the league with 14 unblocked sacks and the second most unblocked pressures last year. Tucker missed a 56-yard field goal. He's just 1 of 7 on his 50-yard field goals, last 7 50-yard plus field goals. They've outgained both of their opponents and forced as many turnovers. Their losses came in overtime in a game they blew and by a toe in week 1. It could very easily be 2-0, but they allowed 4 straight scoring drives to end the game with Minshew. Their offensive line isn't playing all that well. We're not seeing the big burst from Henry. They also don't have a whole lot of depth with receivers. It's Flowers and then the tight ends with Andrews and Likely. So they have never made the playoffs after starting 0-2, and they're now 0-2 for the first time since 2015. What do we do in this game, Erik, with these 2 teams coming off of bad losses last week?
Interesting game. We have the Ravens defensive line against the Cowboys offensive line. We have the Cowboys defensive line against the Raiders offensive line. Who's going to win? Who's going to win this battle of the trenches? The offensive line for the Ravens has been absolutely brutal. They're keeping Mark Andrews in. Mark Andrews is playing more snaps than likely. He's not running as many routes as he was compared to this time last year. Zimmer's, his defense historically do struggle against a mobile quarterback. When you look at the Ravens back four, who's going to be able to guard CeeDee Lamb? CeeDee has, but I think Lamb did not practice today, if I'm reading my notes correctly. Is this a must win for the Ravens? I kind of think it is. I kind of feel like the Ravens need to win this game. But do you trust McCarthy? Do you trust Dak? Cowboys have their own issues. Look at what the Saints did on the ground for them. You know what I mean? They're able to move the ball at ease. Look, I wish we were getting a bigger number with the Cowboys, like a 3 with the Cowboys. But I can't do anything.
Me neither.
Both these teams have some significant questions.
And the Cowboys, for me, have like, I want to play the Ravens, but I don't want to lay this on the, like, I just don't the number on the road for the Ravens here either. I think I want both. Like, I would want +3 for both sides.
Yeah.
If I were going to jump in on it. To me, it's just in the no man's land right here at about a pick 'em here. So, let's move to 49ers at the Rams, man. Two of the most banged up teams this week coming at it. The poor Rams, the injuries, man. They were already down 2 starters on the offensive line. They got decimated with 5 sacks allowed. They had 3 sacks allowed on the first 11 dropbacks. They were down 24-3. They couldn't stop the Cardinals at all. Kupp got hurt. Puka was already hurt. Johnson now. They got defensive starters out. Stafford looked banged up. And the injuries are just stacking up badly. They turned the ball over on downs and went 3 and out 3 times in their first 5 possessions. And the Cardinals were just destroying them. Now, all that being said, this just feels like one of those spots where nobody is going to want to play the Rams at all with what they've seen recently and knowing the Rams are banged up. But the 49ers are banged up too. They haven't looked fantastic. They really struggled against the Flores pressure last week. Remember, McCaffrey's out. Now Debo is going to be out. He's going to miss at least a couple weeks. So the absence of both of those guys, Ayuk has not looked great. He hasn't really gotten involved all that much. So I'm not sure here, Eric. I mean, I'm not laying it with the 49ers. I just don't know if I can play with the Rams because I've seen how bad that offensive line has been. But it was around 7.5, and it's at 7 now. Like, in that between 7 and 10 range, it starts to get playable for the Rams.
Yeah, I got it 7.5.
Yeah.
Teams 2-game losing streak to start the season, 56% against the number. When they're at home in game 3, 57%. When they're dogs, 58%. 0-2 ATS to start the season, 56. 0-2 and they're dogs, 61. Look, this is just a great, all the trends that take the Rams. Shanahan is only 44, percent against the number on the road, favorite over 6. And I really think the big thing is Debo is out. The Niners offense struggles without him. We just look at the sample size of last year. 34.1 points per game with Debo. Without, it dips all the way down to 17. First downs, 23.2 per game, down to 19. Total yards, 426.1 down to 333.3. 275.9 yards per game in the air, down to 238. Even the rushing game dips from 152 per game to 95 without Debo. As much as everyone wants to make the CMC or an Ayuk type offense, this runs through Debo. When he's not there, they struggle.
They just don't have the versatility, right? They don't have a guy that you have to guard no matter where he is. It makes your defense confused. And now all of a sudden, this is a thing that you talk about quite a bit. Teams are best when everybody is put in their right slot, in their right role. And now you take away McCaffrey, you take away Debo, and now all of a sudden Ayuk's your number 1. And that's different. That's just different when teams now know, okay, we don't have to worry about as much of McCaffrey. We don't have to worry as much about Debo. Let's take out Ayuk and Kittle. Those are the guys we're really going to focus on. And things are going to be a lot more difficult for them. That doesn't mean they can't step up and have good games and win, but it's just different for Ayuk being the number 1 guy when you don't have as much attention on McCaffrey. They're always going to try to keep, the box stacked as much as possible. There's always got to be a rover on Debo. Well, that makes your life a whole lot easier, Ayuk.
And I think we need to be worried a little bit about this Niners defense. Last year, 18.8 points per game. This year, they're allowing 21 a game, and they played the Jets and the Vikings. Not exactly 2 high-powered offense. When we look at the PFF grades, Bosa and Warner have been elite. Everyone else, not so much. They're allowing 10 more rushing yards per game compared to last year, and they're coming off a game where they allowed 146 yards to the Vikings, and O'Connell is running the basic same zone running scheme of the Rams. So I think the Rams are going to have success running the ball. And we need to remember no Puka, no Cup. So this is going to lead to the Rams just running the ball even more.
Yep. Maybe we see more quorum, right? It wouldn't be shocking to see like them using both of the running backs a little bit more because they just have to get as many touches out of them as possible. I think Tutu Atwell, maybe an interesting DFS guy to include some of your lineups because he's going to have to get something. There's no Higbee there either. Like there's got to be some guys to throw the ball to at least a few times.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is a great spot. You know, teams coming out with 30-point loss are 59.4% ATS. Niners may be a good team at the end of the year, but right now they're struggling. This is just a buy low, sell high. Give me the Rams here. I got it at 7.5.
3 games left to discuss. Let's talk about the 2 Monday night games this week. And we have the Sunday night game that we're going to get to right now. Sunday night, the Falcons host the Chiefs. Falcons are a 3.5-point home dog coming off that Monday night win where they weren't playing all that well, running the ball okay. Cousins wasn't really moving around too much. And then the Eagles gave them life. The Eagles had a chance to close out the game, to put the game away. They were driving. They were in the red zone. And the Eagles made a bad decision to throw the ball. They could have done a few different things. And even when they made a bad decision, they still had a chance to pick up the first down, and Barkley just dropped it wide open. So they could have still made a bad call, got it, and won the game. Then they kicked instead of going for it on fourth. They also passed it instead of run and taking more time off the clock. They did not execute well, and they left 1 minute and 40 seconds left on the clock for the Falcons. So the Falcons get an opportunity to go 70 yards in 1 minute and 39 seconds. It was an incredible final drive. 1 minute and 56 seconds to go. They had a 0.7% chance of winning the game. It was the 7th most improbable win of the last 9 years. So this is like a massive, crazy comeback, just the way everything was shaping up there. After losing each of his first 9 starts on Monday Night Football, Cousins has now won 4 of his last 5 on primetime. Bijan had a nice game, 14 carries for 97 yards, also 4 catches for 25 yards. Then you look at the Chiefs. This was a Chase Daniel tweet. They were 1 of 8 on third down. They had 3 turnovers. Mahomes only threw for 151 yards. They had to bench their starting tackle after multiple penalties. They found out they lose Hollywood Brown for the year. Travis Kelce had 1 catch for 5 yards. It was the first time in 114 straight games he didn't have at least 3 catches. And he's only had 39 receiving yards in 2 weeks. And they're still 2-0. They still find ways to win. Now, again, sustainable, I'm not sure. But they got a couple victories that could have gone either way. Every time they play the Bengals, it's a really close game. Pacheco is going to be out, though, now, Erik. So they're not going to have as much depth. They're not going to be able to run the ball as well. So it's a weird one for me. Falcons plus the 3.5. Like, I'm not on the Chiefs side, but I don't know if I saw enough from the Falcons yet.
Again, I want nothing to do. How's Cousins going to look against Chris Jones trying to get home against him? Falcons' right side of the offensive line is brutal. Obviously, you're going to line up Jones on top of that. Are the Chiefs going to be able to stop Bijan Robinson? You know, you kind of want to fade the Falcons after that game that
lucky win, right? Yeah.
But I want, again, this is just something I want.
You kind of feel the same about the Chiefs. The Chiefs looked like they were done, and it was a real controversial pass interference call, right, late in the game. And that was a weird one because it's a tough call, and I think like it's hard because the defender was backing up. That's where it gets a little tricky when like you're backing up and the guy's coming to the ball. Like you both have the same right for the ball, but it just looks bad when you nail someone, when you kind of push someone in the back like that. It's probably always going to get called that way because it just visually it looks like you're probably hitting them harder than you really are. I'm staying away from this one, Eric. Let's get to two Monday Night Football games. We have the Jags at the Bills. Bills are a 5-point favorite in here. They rank in the top 10 in 7 categories, top 5 in 5 of those. They've just been really solid. Number 1 in offensive success rate, number 2 in offensive EPA and DVOA. They've now beaten the Dolphins 6 straight times. They got up really big early, and they just didn't have to do anything the rest of that game. It was a Cook game. They were able to lean on him a little bit. They took advantage of Dolphins turnovers. Tua got hurt, and then they were able to shut down Tyreek Hill, who only had 3 catches for 24 yards. Then you look at the Jags. They are a bit of a weird team. They very easily could have won both of their games so far, but they're 0-2. They've been sloppy. Based on the metrics, they're pretty solid, especially on offense. But defensively, they've allowed some big plays. They're not throwing the ball enough on early downs. They only had 81 yards of total offense at halftime and weren't possessing the ball at all. But kind of feels like at this point, we knew this with the schedule for them, Eric, that they were going to have a tough start to the season. And maybe they could start to round back into form when they go and have those back-to-back games in London. I don't know if I want to lay this with the Bills. Did you back the Jags here at +5, or is there a number that you'd get on Jacksonville?
Bills 2-0. Obviously, they could have lost to the Cardinals. Tua got hurt. So that's a little skewed to me. Teams 2-0, week 3, 46% against the number. I kind of feel this is a Jags must win. Jags defense is going to force the Bills to throw with how they run this pass funnel type system. Really looks to take away the way of the run. That's kind of anti what the Bills have been doing. Are the Bills going to be able to stop the Jags run game? I think this is going to be a heavy Travis Etienne game. Bills are still a little bit banged up, especially on the defensive side. Kind of feel like it's a letdown spot for the Bills after the shellacking of the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. When we look at Allen, he does struggle the last 2 games he has played against this Jaguars. Road Dogs 0-2, game 3, 57% ATS. Trends tell me to bet the Jags, so I'm going to take the Jags.
Yep, I think it's the Jags side. Final game, Eric. Bengals hosting the Commanders. Bengals are a 7.5-point favorite in this game, trying to get their first victory of the year. They've just been bad starting the season with Taylor. They're 1-11 in the first 2 weeks since Taylor took over. But defensively, they've only given up 275 passing yards in both games combined. And they held Mahomes to a bad game, but they're 0-2. I don't know. Like, Washington feels like they're going to try to slow it down, right? They're going to run the ball. They're going to try to do what they did last week with those big, long drives and less possessions, suck the life out of the game. I don't know if I can get on either way. I'm definitely not laying it with the Bengals.
I'm still somehow alive in circa, so I'm taking the Bengals this week. Jaden Daniels, I talked about on my show, he's scared to throw the ball. If we watch the coach's tape, there's numerous people open. He's just scared to throw it. I think he's going to struggle against this Bengals type defense. He's basically a check down Charlie too. When you look at his ADOT and what he's doing, there's a lot of check down passes to Eckler. I think Eckler is a good fantasy play here. T. Higgins should be coming back. This is just kind of what the Bengals do. They lose their first 2 games and then they make a run on and almost make the playoffs or make the playoffs. So I feel this is kind of too big of a number. I don't want anything to do with this number. Survivor obviously pick the Bengals, look to take some Eckler receiving props.
Eric, we will be back on Sunday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. We're going to have a giveaway of $50 win, a $50 bet you can make on the Sunday night game. Make sure you come and subscribe to Eric's channel on Sunday, and make sure we will give you a prompt in the next few days. We'll have a question or something that we need everyone to answer, so that way they can comment on that. Anything you want to mention, Erik, before we get out of here?
Good luck in your bets, retail, and hopefully we can make some money this week.
We will talk to you all on Sunday. If you're listening on the podcast, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Make sure to come and tune in, and we'll get you all set up on Sunday with all the latest news and notes. Good luck, everyone, in all your plays this week.